Welcome, everybody, to the Executive Speaker Night series brought to you by the Regis University and the Energy Africa Conference. Today, we are privileged to have Phil Washington as our guest. And as the meeting unfolds, you learn more about Phil Washington and his accomplishments. Phil, I would like to welcome you.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here, Professor.
Thank you. Phil, you were born and raised on the south side of Chicago. What was your early life like, and how have those experiences affected your life and career?
Well, I was the only son of a single mother living in public housing on the south side of Chicago. The public housing there was called Artgale Gardens, and it had the distinction of actually being one of, if not the oldest, public housing developments in the country. And it was built on a waste dump, actually, across the highway. There were many, many landfills and industrial facilities surrounding the area. And it made for some tough breathing for a lot of people because it was near and in some cases right on top of a landfill. But grew up with a single mom out there. I had 5 sisters. I'm an only son. And we lived in very humble public housing apartment. And I like to think that through God's grace, actually, and mercy, I was able to survive that and be able to go to school there. I was born and raised there, and so it was a pretty tough experience, right, in a large city like Chicago.
Being born in South Chicago and being a son of a single mother, tell us a little bit about her and how she influenced your life.
Well, she was a young teenage girl who was born in Chicago as well in 1933. She ended up as the valedictorian of the largest high school in the city of Chicago in 1950. And so here was a very smart young lady, and she, as a single mother, she struggled mightily. At the age of 24, she had 5 children by the age of 24. And obviously, she had a lot of potential as the valedictorian of the largest high school in Chicago, but really didn't get that opportunity before she married young. And by the time I was the 5th child, my father had left, but she wanted to make sure education was very, very important to her, and she wanted to make sure that all of her children received and earned their college degree. And so she earned her college degree only after all of her children had earned theirs. So she was a real unsung hero, if you will. Her influence on me was really everything. I was a civil rights baby, I guess you could call it. My mother took me, she was very civic minded. She took me to hear speakers that came to Chicago, civil rights speakers, ministers, anyone that was important that was speaking in the city of Chicago. that were of prominence and where we could get in free, she took us there. So, I am a civil rights baby. I went to a lot of different marches, civil rights marches, and things like that, and really was civic minded growing up. So my mother taught us a lot, and she taught us to be public servants along the way as well.
Very interesting. You joined the U.S. Army. During that time, did you
Mm-hmm.
think that you were signing up for a career?
I joined the military. I went down and joined the military when I was 17 years old. I lied about my age. I can say that now. And I was actually expelled from high school in my senior year, in October of my senior year. I was not the best student, or I was not the most well-behaved student. And I can remember being expelled from school because I had gotten in trouble or something, and in October of my senior year, I'm kicked out, and I decided to go down to the recruiting office. It was a spur of the moment thing. And I got down there, and the Army recruiter said, "Hey, listen, you have to be a high school graduate." And I thought, well, wait a minute, I just got kicked out of school. What am I supposed to do? I was afraid to tell my mother, and I think I waited maybe a week before I told her. And I thought she would just pretty much say that, "Hey, listen, this is on you. Go on, do what you got to do. I'm not going to worry about you anymore, and just give up on me." But she instead said, "Hey, listen, we're going up to that school." And so this was the first time, I should say, that I saw my mother break down and cry in the principal's office. And so to her, this was her only son not getting a high school diploma. And so I tell that story because it was sort of my what I call significant emotional event. I think we all have one, but that was my significant emotional event. And so I made up in my mind that I would do everything I needed to do to get my high school degree and join the Army. And keep in mind that this was in 1976. And the Vietnam War had just ended. Actually, it was 1975 when I signed up in the Army on what's called a delayed entry program. And the Vietnam War had just ended in April of that year. So this was really going into the United States military at the drawdown of the Vietnam War. And I thought that I never thought that I would have this as a career. I thought I would stay for a couple of years. I ended up staying for 25 years in the United States Army, and earning the highest rank possible for an enlisted soldier. So, it was an interesting journey.
So what did you learn in the Army that helps you most in your career now?
Well, I think there's a number of things. I mean, obviously, the sort of intangibles, discipline and integrity and values and all of those things. Those are the most important things, I think. I'll say this before I answer that question. Just my first duty station, basic training. I grew up in the era of Emmett Till, the killing of Emmett Till, who was from Chicago as well. This was a 14-year-old boy that was killed in the South that really started the civil rights movement in this country. And so I can remember my mother being afraid for me to go to the South to basic training to start my military career. And so so that was really something. But in terms of what I learned, other than, you know, the discipline and all those things, one of the key things was my first platoon sergeant. My first platoon sergeant was just back from Vietnam, and he told me, he said, Washington, I should be able to assign you to every job in the military in that particular military unit. And it was an air defense artillery unit. And he said, I should be able to put you in any one of these jobs, and you should be able to function in that job within 90 days. And that has guided me for the last 40 years or so, to be flexible, to do whatever, to do the toughest jobs, and to do whatever is asked from me. So I point to that in terms of what has stuck with me and what I've learned, in addition to all the other things that I mentioned, integrity, values, discipline, and that sort of thing.
Well, now you are in the transportation business. How did that come about?
Well, it was, you know, quite auspicious, inauspicious, I guess. It was, I was stationed in Colorado, and a lot of people think I'm from Colorado, but, you know, I'm not. You know, as I mentioned, I'm from Chicago, but this was my last duty station. So I was stationed here in Colorado, and I looked to retire from the Army. I got orders to go to Korea, and I was going to go to Korea. I was all prepared to go, and at that time, for soldiers that were my rank, it was a 1-year unaccompanied tour, meaning you can't take your family. So I was ready to do that for 1 year. But just as I was going to accept those orders, the Army said, hey, we're going to change that policy to make it 2 years unaccompanied. And so I thought, you know what, that's my sign to get out. And I happened to see an ad in the Sunday newspaper that was offering a job at the transportation agency. And it was a high-level job. It was the assistant general manager, or sort of equivalent to the deputy CEO for administration. And so I applied for that job. I still had 12 months to go in the Army, though. And I can remember going in and getting interviewed by the CEO at that time. And as you know, luck or grace or blessings would have it, he was a Vietnam veteran, and he understood my role and responsibilities. He understood my rank at that time. He understood what I did, and he offered me the job right there on the spot. But I still had 1 year left to go in the Army, and so I called my friend at the Pentagon. And he was a good friend of mine. I knew him for many years, and I said to him, listen, man, I got a job, man. I got to get out of this Army, man. You know, it's like a big deal. I got a job. And so he said, there's no way that I can shorten your tour by 12 months. He said, what I can do is maybe shave off 6 months of it. And he did. And, but I still had 6 months to go. And I called the CEO who I just got interviewed by, and he said, listen, I'll wait for you. And I thought, you know, this is incredible that this man, I just met this man in an interview. He's waiting for me for 6 months until I can retire. And so I tell that story because those two individuals, if it were not for them, I probably would not be in transportation. And as fate would have it, the individual at the Pentagon, my buddy, was killed a year later in the 9/11 attack on the Pentagon. And the CEO at the transportation agency that hired me, I ended up replacing him after working for him for 9 years. and he passed away, and I replaced him. So, these things happen, and in some cases, they're divine providence. But that's how I got into the transportation industry.
Wow, that's fascinating. Before you left Denver for Los Angeles, you worked for RTD, which you've just explained, and
Hmm.
was instrumental in the Grand Station DIA project. Can you
Hmm.
discuss the project and your contribution to that project?
Yes, sure. I the project was in trouble. The whole program was in trouble here in Denver, and we had not lived up. The agency had not lived up to the promise when we went to the voters in 2004 for a sales tax increase. We had nothing in construction or under construction, and the recession had just hit, the recession of 2007, 2008. And the board of directors decided to make a change to the CEO position. And so the individual who had hired me, he was pushed out in many respects. And I became the interim CEO, and I began to think about how we could move these projects forward through unconventional project delivery methods, public-private partnerships, bringing in the private sector for them to bring equity to the projects and invest in the projects with a potential payback on the back end. So we went about the business of pushing forward on Union Station. And so the Union Station that you see now, which we had purchased in 2001, we decided to make that the hub. The plan was always to make that the hub of the whole system, but we began to do what we had to do to bring in the private sector to help us build that. We layered on 11 different funding and financing tools or methods to build Union Station. We took out some loans. We had private equity, and we opened Union Station to much fanfare in 2014. And you can see what it looks like now and all the development that is around it. The development around Union Station now is up to about $6 or $7 billion. We use the tax increment finance revenue or the TIF revenue to pay off the loans for the transit elements of Union Station. We also thought about how we could build as what I used to say, as much as we can, as fast as we can until it's all done. And so we built the rail line out to Lakewood. We built the line to Denver International Airport through a public-private partnership. We built the line through Aurora, the R line, from the savings of the line to the airport. We built North Metro up towards Thornton and Broomfield. We built that line on the savings of the A line to the airport. So we figured it out. And I'm happy to say that our team that we put together did so well in figuring that out that we were able to get about 75% of fast tracks done, really almost 80%. And I have hopes that we can finish it up with that line to Boulder.
Well, after your success, you decided you should celebrate your success in Los Angeles. What were your accomplishments in Los Angeles? Did you have some projects that you worked on there?
Yeah, after the success here in Denver, I was actually recruited by the mayor of Los Angeles, Mayor Garcetti. And I accepted that offer, and I went out to Los Angeles and I was out there for 6 years. And we decided, we being the region, decided to go out for a vote of the people to build infrastructure in Los Angeles County. And we went out to the people, had a campaign, and was able to win 71% of the vote, approved 71% approval of the measure for a half-cent sales tax. And we were bold enough not to put a time limit on that measure. So that measure goes on forever until or unless the voters decide to end it. And so to give you an example of what that means in terms of revenue is that measure will raise $120 billion in the first 40 years of that measure to build out rail, to build out highway improvements, because we were also responsible for highway improvements in Los Angeles County. So that measure will yield revenues for really forever, unless the voters vote to end it. And so the projects that we built out there were rail lines, the improvement of Union Station in Los Angeles, and it will continue to pay dividends for many, many years to come. So I look at that as one of it's that measure in Los Angeles is the largest measure in the United States ever in the United States for a region.
Now you are scheduled to, for confirmation as the next administrator for the Federal Aviation Agency. What kind of challenges do you foresee for yourself?
Well, let me say this, that, I am honored to be nominated by the President of the United States. And I'm honored, to be nominated. You have to pinch yourself when you are nominated by the President for a job. I mean, I'm still a kid at heart from the South Side of Chicago, growing up in public housing. And so to be nominated by the President is a great honor. I still have to be confirmed by the United States Senate. And those hearings will begin hopefully next month. But it's a great honor. I mean, there's a lot to do. Obviously, I hope that I am confirmed. But it's you still have the hearing, and if I'm fortunate enough to be confirmed by the U.S. Senate, there are a ton of challenges to work on in aviation. So we'll see how it goes, but just the nomination is a great honor.
Very well said. Now, looking at your career, you have led these organizations, done very large projects, and some of those projects have been during COVID-19. How has that tested your leadership?
Well, I think COVID-19. Before I answer that question, I'll just say that during my United States military career, during my career in leading RTD, my career in leading Los Angeles Metro, and now at Denver International Airport, which has some big challenges as well. I think, and COVID, your question on how's this tested my leadership, I think all of those positions require strong and steady leadership. And obviously COVID was sort of a once in a lifetime thing. Hopefully we don't see it again, but I think regardless whether there is a pandemic or anything else, strong, steady, honest leadership is critical all the time. But during the COVID, I think there's greater demands on resources. The decisions have higher stakes. The complexity and the variables in the decision-making process increases a great deal. During COVID, the early part of COVID, I was in Los Angeles. I was adamant that not one person would be laid off, not one person. I had 11,000 employees. And going through COVID, even when service was down and we didn't need all of the employees, my insistence and my priority was not to lay off anyone. And we see now, I think, the importance around the country of people that did lay off folks, and it's so hard to get them back now through recruiting. And but I like to think that the agency in Los Angeles, because we did not lay anybody off, is faring much better than other agencies around the country. And I think the last thing I'll say about the COVID and the leadership that's required is that I really leaned on and relied on the leadership skills that I learned in my nearly 25-year military career. And I had the pleasure of serving under General Colin Powell, back in the 80s. And one of the things he always talked about was this idea of a 40-70 rule. The 40-70 rule says that you will likely get information, or the range of information that you will receive on any big decision is between 40 and 70%. And if you don't have 40%, then you don't have enough information to make a decision. However, if you wait to get 100% of the information, then you usually what we used to call OBE, or overcome by events. So the idea is that you need to be able to make a decision between that 40 and 70% of information that you receive. And so the equation is P equal 40 to 70, P being the probability of success. And so if you're within that range, your intuition, your experience, your gut instincts should allow you to make a decision within that range of information that you will receive. And so that is how I make my decisions. I don't wait until I get 100%, because it may be too late. So those are some of the things that I think about in leading during COVID and other times.
Well, that leads me into my next question. What has your overall career taught you about planning versus reacting to opportunities?
I think my overall career, I'll say this. I mean, not obviously, but as I explained to you, when I was younger, we struggled as a family. My entire family struggled. Even then, in the 70s, there were some tough times in Chicago in terms of crime, and it's worse now, I think. But I had at least 2 or 3 risk of being harmed fatally during my teenage years and even in the United States Army. But I think, I always try to keep the faith, if you will, keep moving forward. And that's what you have to do throughout your career. There's going to be plenty of times when things are dark. And you're going to be low sometimes, but you keep pushing through, and you work hard, you stay focused. Like I tell my son, he's in the transportation business right now. and he's leading people. And I talked to him about remembering his integrity, remembering to be honest and loyal, and remembering, as my friend and mentor Norm Mineta, who just passed away not long ago, what he would say is, the only thing you have is your name. The only thing you have. And so if that is compromised by your actions, where you do not do the right thing, I think, what he was saying is you lose that. And so I think in terms of my career and the career advice that I would give young people is understand that preparedness, being prepared, and opportunity, where those two things intersect, is when you have to be ready to take on a position, because you don't know it's coming. I didn't know that a call from the White House would come a few months ago, asking me whether I wanted to be considered for the FAA administrator position. And as a result, being the first Black man to be nominated for that position. And so I think where preparedness and opportunity intersect is when we have to be ready to step into leadership voids. And so that's the advice I would give to young people.
Thank you. We all hope that you'll be confirmed. Do you have something that you are most passionate about?
Well, I think I got it's probably a couple of things. One is equity, diversity, and inclusion. It's a lifelong passion of mine. My legacy, I hope, is to help young people achieve. Wherever I've worked, I've tried to leverage my position to improve opportunities for underprivileged people. And my service at DEN is no different. My time in the military is no different. My time at RTD in Denver is no different. My time in Los Angeles was no different. So the idea of equity, diversity, and inclusion, I was thinking about that long before George Floyd was murdered a couple of years ago, when this became sort of almost a buzzword, equity. I've been thinking about this and trying to step into and provide opportunities for people of color, for women, and I'll continue to do that. So I'm most passionate in that whole idea of equity, diversity, and inclusion, and providing opportunities and professional development for people that otherwise would not have those opportunities. We, while in LA, we decided to build a school, sort of an infrastructure school, a high school, grades 9 to 12, focusing on foster care kids, focusing on kids whose parents have been exposed to the justice system, and those kids whose parents have gone to jail. And so that school is a boarding school concept. Ironically enough, the school is being built on the site of the Rodney King riots from 1992 in Los Angeles. That school will open up in January of next year. We'll start with the 9th grade and eventually add 1 grade per year to where there'll be 480 kids in this school learning infrastructure and learning how to build infrastructure and operate infrastructure in this country. And so that is the true legacy. We can talk about building bridges and building rail lines and building buildings and all of that, but what I think about is building lives.
Wonderful. Now we've been quite serious asking all these questions. Now let's get to the lighter side of this conversation. Can you tell me something fun about yourself?
Something fun. Well, I mean,
Yes.
when I was younger, I played a lot of sports. I still get out there and work out, but I don't, do the sports and basketball and baseball and all of that. But now I love jazz. I've always been sort of a music person, and my family had music background. My mother could play by ear, just sit down at a piano and just start playing. I mean, it was incredible. So I've always had this love of jazz music. And so when I travel for business, I'm always looking for a place that has a good jazz club. And I think, I sort of compare jazz music to running an organization. Jazz in jazz music, there's a lot of individualism. There are people that may be playing different things, and they're doing solos, they're jamming or whatever, and they're individual maybe with their instrument and all of that, but um, together it sounds good, even though individuals might be playing different kind of bars. And organizations are a lot like that. You have individuals doing their respective jobs, but in an organization, just like jazz music, it should all sound good together. And that is how I strive to lead organizations where, yes, people are doing their individual jobs, but from an organizational standpoint, does it work well together? And so that's my sort of fun thing, now that you've asked.
Thank you. I would like to open it up now for questions from the audience.
Okay.
Questions?
I have a question.
And if you have a
Sure.
question, please raise your hand. Okay. Well, yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity. And Mr. Washington, it is such a pleasure, and you're such a gem, a treasure to so many communities. And thank you for being that phenomenal example. Um, I'm, my name's Theodora Oye, and I'm reaching out from the LA area. And my question is this: I wanted to know if there's anything that we, the general public, can do to help um, your confirmation, your upcoming confirmation. Do we talk to, I mean, would it help to reach out to our senators or congresspeople or whatever, or is it just send the good vibes towards you because they already have the resume? What can we do, if anything, to help you just ensure what Professor Pawanga just mentioned about, we all are, wishing and counting on this, on your confirmation, or you're sailing through the confirmations. So what can we do to help, if anything?
Well, thank you for that. And I think both things work, vibes and and other things. I think the easiest way, and several various groups have done this, and that's letters to the committee. And so the committee is the Senate Committee on Commerce, Science, and Transportation. And I think the easiest way are letters to the chair of that committee, who is Chair Maria Cantwell from Washington, D.C., or I'm sorry, Washington State. So yeah, I mean, if people feel inclined to do that, I think it's letters to that committee. That's usually how it's done. And then vibes, pointing towards the east or whatever. since you're in California, they work too.
Thank you. Anybody else? Well, looks like we don't have any more questions. I would like to thank you very much, Mr. Washington, for being able to.
Luca, we
Yes.
have a question from Ken Sagendorf.
Oh. Hi, Ken.
Hi, Luca. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Please go ahead.
Mr. Washington, thanks. Thanks for sharing. I had the opportunity to teach at the Air Force Academy for a bunch of years, and really that's a wonderful leadership opportunity and laboratory. So thank you for sharing your military experience and that leadership opportunity. In some of the classes we teach here at Regis, we think about business a little bit differently. We think about, I'm teaching a marketing strategy class right now, and for instance, we talk about a business's role in creating value for the business, for the customer, and for society. And so as you lead at DIA and as you look towards the future of the FAA, my big question is, what's the value that gets created by a public service sector, and how does that value become the thing instead of the arguments over resources in a city and county of like Denver, for instance?
So if I understand the question, what is the value of public service?
I think it's, how does the public service create those values and market that those are the values that those are the value that it creates?
Well, I think you know, I think, you know, in terms of leading an organization like DIA, and you know, I was thinking about this the other day, is you know, DIA is the big economic generator for the entire state of Colorado. I mean, DIA generates about $33 billion annually for the state in terms of people movement, cargo movement, jobs, and all of that. And so the value of that is making sure we get it right, if you will, in terms of running an organization this large, with it being so important to the economic, being the economic engine for the state of Colorado. So I think, you know, I talk to my leadership all the time about, you know, we have to be the ones that make this happen. No one else is going to do that. And I've always said, and I don't know if this fully answers your question, but I've always said that, you know, as leaders, especially public sector leaders, we have to understand how to motivate people. You know, I used to say in my military career, you know, soldiers don't charge a hill for money. They do it for something else. They do it because of their buddy next to them in the foxhole, if you will, or they do it for a sense of public service. They do it for a sense of making sure people get to their destination safely and all that. So I think, you know, in terms of the value, I think we have to have a value that's much more valuable than just, you know, money. It has to have a higher level of value to us as individuals. So that's how I would answer that, I think.
Yeah, I so appreciate that idea, and this goes back to your connection to your work with diversity, that sense of belonging. I mean, we know it's an economic driver, but that's not merely enough in the conversation with the community. I mean, we need that sense of belonging to participate and to help grow.
That's right. Yeah, I agree.
Thank you.
Great question, Ken. Sure. Anthony.
Can you all hear me?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, thank you. Hello, Philip. My name is Anthony Clark. I am an MBA student here at Regis, who also has a background in aviation. I think my my question to you is, as you navigate then through two massive projects, the Great Hall Project and the gate expansion process, what are some of the things that you have on your list as a potential candidate to lead the FAA?
You mean, what do I bring from what I'm doing now to the FAA?
I would say more so, what are some of the things that you noticed? Because right now we're looking at an influx in customer, I'd say a decline in customer satisfaction from airlines, infrastructure, and gosh, there's so many things. But what are some of the topics that are top priority for you as you navigate to becoming the next administrator for the FAA?
Well, so I hesitate to provide, you know, what my plans are for FAA because one, you know, I'm not in the position just yet, but I'll say this: there's no shortage of challenges. Now we know the challenges. We know about the delays. We know about the cancellations. We know about the staffing shortages. We know about the oversight and the certification of aircraft. We know about the highest priority, that being safety for not just FAA, but the United States Department of Transportation. So what I'll say is, without saying what my priorities are, because that would not be appropriate for me right now, not being in the position. But what I will say is that if I am fortunate enough to be confirmed, that I will bring, you know, the attributes that I have brought to every position that I have had in my adult life, and will operate with those sets of the set of values that I talked about earlier: integrity, trust, transparency, all of those things. And so that is what I would offer without, you know, saying what, you know, my priorities will be in the position. I think I'll have, if this works out, then I'll have enough time to lay those out when the time is right.
How about we review
Thank
it
you.
with you should things work out, which we were hoping
What's
will
that
work
again?
out. How about we
Oh,
circle
okay.
back with you once the whole process is done?
Yeah. Just you know, let me know. I shouldn't have too much to do.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other question? Well, and we only have 60 seconds remaining. Thank you very much, Mr. Washington, for having taken some time off your busy schedule to visit with us this evening. We really highly appreciate it, and we hope that you get confirmed. Please join me in thanking Mr. Washington for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
This is great.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Sorry the technology didn't work out, but we'll fix it next time. Thank you.
Absolutely. Now at least I have time to say hi to some of the people that hey, I can see Leslie there, obviously. Susan, how are you?
Very good.
Mark, Ken. Oh, Ken is hiding now. Hey, how are you, Ken? And oh, Maggie, how are you?
Hello there.
And Jasmine, how are you? Gary.
Well, thank you. That's very interesting. Thank you.
All these faces, you know. Gail, how are you? Oh, she's there. All right. Thank you very much for coming and for participating in this event. We highly appreciate your presence.